Welcome to this interview with Tommy Maloney and his wife Annie Stelling. Tommy is a parenting coach and he helps divorced fathers stay in touch with their children after divorce. Annie, his wife, is experienced in building healthy marriages. Together they are a very interesting team because they are able to tell us how remarriage after divorce, while bringing different children in different families together, can work out and create a really healthy and happy marriage. So welcome to this interview, Annie and Tommy.
Thanks for having us, Hannah.
Thank you so much. Would you like to tell us a little bit of what you have been through and what brought you to this exciting work of working with families?
Probably about 5 or so years ago, I was program manager to, as you said, the federal grant for building healthy marriages. It was the Healthy Marriage Initiative, when my then husband decided he wanted a divorce. And it was kind of a blessing and a curse. And the curse is kind of obvious. You're program manager of a healthy marriage program and your marriage falls apart.
Yeah.
But the blessing...
First-hand experience.
Yes, absolutely. But the blessing actually was that it had given me the tools to recognize how toxic our marriage had gotten and how to get out of the marriage in a much more healthier manner than, probably 5-10 years prior to that. Had that happened, I would have been a complete mess. In addition to that, I was working with the state fatherhood program, and so I was seeing firsthand what it was on the other side. Dads going through divorce and the impact on kids, and that just made me even more determined to make sure that my children maintain their relationship with their dad, and that we were able to keep that relationship going, and he had an active part in their lives. Through that, I learned an awful lot. There was a lot of things that just came out. It wasn't an amicable divorce. We definitely had our struggles, and talking to other people about, well, how do you do this? I got some pretty weird answers. Treat it like a business. I'm like, if this was my business partner, I wouldn't be in business. Or just be a grown-up about it. I was like, what does that mean?
Right.
So just really through all of that, and then meeting Tommy and his work with the fatherhood stuff, and we really kind of honed our focus into how do we help families get through that crisis in a more healthy manner, how to co-parent with the other parent in a better manner, and then how to build step families or bonus families.
Right. What you said actually reminded me, because my family was divorced when I was a child, and it was not divorced when I was a child, it was divorced when I was a grown-up, a young grown-up. But I have to tell from my own experience what you just initially said, that a marriage that is not good is not necessarily a benefit to a child.
Right.
A marriage that's really not running well, it's something to consider, that is a dissolution of a marriage maybe a better thing for a child than the continuance of this marriage for years and years and years, and the children seeing their parents really suffering and not doing well in the marriage. So I think that's one thing that I feel today, with even the divorce rates being so high, but maybe there is an honesty that people say it doesn't work together, but in that honesty we have to find tools. Where do we go from here in a creative and a positive way? And I know, Tommy, you've worked a lot with post-divorce dads, and you see that many of them disconnect eventually from their kids, or just move on, or...
Well, growing up, I was 5 when my parents went through their divorce, and, going through that, I learned what not to do, and I learned that I wanted to be involved with my son's life, and I wanted to be there for him as best I can. Because of what I saw, my dad and I have a great relationship now, but back then he was young, he didn't want to be a dad, he wanted to be a single guy out in the downtown Chicago and having fun. And I get it. But for me, it was more of I wanted to be heavily involved, and because of my divorce, which also wasn't amicable, and it was a life lesson that I had to learn right away. How do I stay connected with my son? At that time, I was traveling a lot for work, and so I had to build a relationship with him when I'm not in the same household anymore. And because of that, it gave me great experience of, with other dads who wanted to know as well, how do I stay connected with my son, my daughter, my kids? And I said, I'll tell you how I did it. It's not always the same way, but it's the way that I think really helped in a positive way with all of our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Before we explain that a little bit more, would you be willing to tell us, how did it affect you as a child when at first it seemed like your dad was not as engaged with you? How did you experience that as a child?
I remember there was at least a couple of soccer events where I saw my mom show up to the game, and I said, "Where's Dad?" And he's not coming. It's like, you want to be, in those, especially as a boy, you want to be in those sports moments, and there's your dad in the stands rooting you on. And I think it hurt a lot. And again, my mom was, even to this day, is my number one fan.
Mm-hmm.
But with my dad, what I learned at that young age was, again, what not to do. And I really think it emotionally affected me for a long, long time without me really realizing it. And I don't know, it probably took, after marrying Ann here, to realize how much that affected me. And again, I didn't want, in my situation, I didn't want my son to have those emotional down days, those dark days, as much as I did.
Yeah, I can totally relate. Because even though parents might separate, but the child will not go through the same separation. I think that's one of the things that I find so important for any divorcee to realize. You adult man or adult woman want to separate, but that is not the wish of your child.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I just wanted to be very clear. We're not, by any stretch of the imagination, minimizing single moms.
Mm-hmm.
They have done an amazing job raising almost a whole generation of single-parent households. What we're saying is that as great of a job as you're doing, how much better can that child's life be if Dad were more active in that life?
Correct.
So.
Well, I better go, "Hi, Mom," because you're watching.
Well, and one of the painful things that I see a lot as well is that children are often then used for combat, for fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think programs like yours and the one that you are in the process of developing, which is a program actually that teaches people how to blend families, which I really want to commend you, and which is the reason that I was really looking forward to this interview, is that in this blending, it requires skill. It's not just done from the gut level,
Right.
One thing I would like to tell all your viewers out there is that I think, again, we're not psychiatrists, we're not doctors, but we really worked hard. I want not more from the gut, but more from the heart to go, all right, if the two of us are going to have a relationship, if we're going to, blend our families, and I always kid that, we're smaller than the Brady Bunch, but the philosophy that we came up with was first, all right, we need to start to know each other. And the way we did it was we dated for about a month and then decided, all right, let's get the kids together. But we understood that we didn't need that excess stress. We didn't need the excess baggage. If the kids didn't get along, we couldn't continue on. And it was fantastic. The kids get along, and we kind of, I don't know if we invented it, but we call them our bonus kids. Right?
Yeah.
And it's a bonus brother, it's a bonus sister. And quick story was 2 years ago, my son Connor had a hockey tournament up in the mountains, and the girls wanted to go skiing. I don't ski. Live in Colorado and I don't ski. But they took a break and they were having lunch, and this gentleman said, "Oh, what are you guys doing here?" And then Betsy, Ann's oldest, my oldest bonus, said, "Oh, we're here for my brother's hockey tournament." And I almost just lost it right there, going, "Oh my gosh, they get it."
Yeah.
And again, I think we worked really hard to build a loving family, but we knew the foundation right away was if the kids didn't get along. And we've heard stories upon stories how, families were, you're trying to take, two different entities and try to morph them into one, and it doesn't always work.
Right.
And I think we did it, I want to say we did it the right way.
My sense is that because you made your children the priority in this merging, that they felt that they had that choice, and that made it easier for them to accept that choice. Because I think sometimes when children are placed in a final situation, you've got to do what mom wants, you've got to do what dad decided.
Right.
That can bring out resentment or maybe even rebellion of some sort, to feel I'm put into this situation without my own free will. I have no choice.
Well, I think it's hard for the fact that coming from the kid's point of view, a lot of them are confused on, all right, especially when it comes to loyalty.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's really hard. So, for example, if Ann tells, Connor to do something, he has yet to do it, but, I've heard stories where, well, you're not my mom, you can't tell me what to do.
Right.
This is the other question that I had. When parents go through a divorce, it's very difficult for us adults. I mean, I've been divorced. You, of course, have been divorced both. It's a very difficult process just for an adult to go through. And how does a child cope with it? So, what is their way of going through a divorce? And as a remarried couple in this blended family, do you have ways of addressing this still with your children? How to relate to two dads and how to eventually relate to two moms or to, two sets of families that are not very close. Did you find ways that make the process easier?
We did. The first thing is to realize that each child is a different person. And what you do with one child is not going to work with the other child.
Yes.
My oldest, she kind of struggles a bit because she was about 12 or 13 when we got divorced. And we didn't have that shouting, yelling type of marriage. It fell apart very quickly. And so she struggles sometimes to develop the trust, where the younger two seem to want to try and get the attention and try to get our approval. The best thing, the first thing is just be honest with them and ask them straight out. You're not going to put ideas into their heads that aren't already there. And just talk to them. A great example is Tommy's son Connor, my bonus son. The last 6 or so months seemed to withdraw from me whenever we were down and his mom was there, whatever. And so I simply said to him, I said, Connor, I'm sensing, you don't want to hug me, what, not really sure what's going on, but I just wanted you to know it's okay. And that I'll be here no matter what. And he was like, oh, okay. And I'm not even sure he realized it, and maybe I was transferring more of my feelings onto it, which is okay too.
Yeah.
But just putting it out there, it's okay. If that's how you feel, it's okay. I'm going to be here. I think too often as adults, because we're broken from the divorce, we tend to make it about ourselves.
Yes.
And it's not about us.
Yes.
It's about the kids and their feelings and how they're going through it.
That's a very true observation. I think that a negative feeling, just by being accepted, it often has a chance to just dissipate, or the child finds a relief of being heard, even in a negative state. Now, I don't know how your individual divorces were, but I know a lot of families where the ex-partner is not really very cooperative, or where it seems to me that from your sides there's a lot of generosity and kindness that you extend. And do you have any tips or any advice for people that possibly deal with an ex-spouse that is very adverse or very attacking in their own perception?
Well, the short story I have is over 2 years ago, my former wife and I were in court because she wanted to move out of state and take our son. And when the judge was giving his ruling, I think he understood that our co-parenting skills were very lack and needed more work. And he was right. I mean, he was really, he was only, that was 4 hours. And he understood that my former wife and I needed to work harder on our co-parenting skills. And a lot of times it's the picking up the child and returning the child, and there's no communication there. My thing was, he's right, well, plus he's a judge. And I said, all right, I'm going to work harder at that. And I remember saying to Annie, well, I'm just going to kill her with kindness. And she's like, that's not going to really work. I love the teachings of Dr. Wayne Dyer. He does a lot of things where he talks about talk from the heart. And so one of the first things I did was, it was right around my former wife's birthday, and I said, happy birthday. No acknowledgement, but that's okay, because I wanted to prove to myself that I could start a conversation. And Anne's a great sounding board, because I'll just be like, oh, I got another email.
Right.
Yeah.
Have somebody you can bounce off those emails and, does this sound petty? Does this sound angry? The bottom line is you got to take the high road every time, no matter what. It doesn't matter if the kids see who takes the high road all the time, because a lot of times they don't see it. It doesn't matter if the other person ever takes the high road themselves, because you can't live on that. You can't, I'm going to take the high road so that hopefully he'll see and you'll go crazy waiting for that moment, because you'll be scrutinizing it so much that it'll never happen. You just take the high road every time so that you can look yourself in the mirror every day and know that you're doing the best you can, and that you're not being petty or manipulative or angry or bitter. And it's going back to that forgiveness, and and understanding forgiveness isn't letting him off the hook. It's just letting go of the anger.
Yes. Thank you for saying that.
Yes.
That is a very important tool that you have found, and that tool really, every person can generate that tool. And I believe that from the perspective that I have as a divorcee, as having been a child in a divorce situation, I believe that the fighting is the worst part for any child in any divorce, because the separating of families or of partners that's understandable.
Well, I would, because Annie brought up a good point. I look at, my former wife and I are in a similar situation where we didn't fight a lot. I was one of those guys that, I don't want to say scared to death of her. I was more of, whatever she said, I didn't want to have a confrontation. And I think there was only one time where my son heard a confrontation. I would say that I would rather have a situation where parents are arguing, at least they're communicating, versus any situation where they didn't.
Right. So there's a healthy way to argue, and then there's maybe a perpetual stress type of way to argue.
Right.
But I agree with you that, emotions, and one of our cultural difficulties, I think, is that we do not process emotions. We do not really are consciously aware of how we process emotions. And eventually at the beginning of a marriage, it all looks so rosy. And then suddenly when it doesn't look rosy, we don't have the tools to process it.
Right.
So, some of what you're saying, I think, is actually something that can be applied in the marriage before it comes to the breakup, or even from the start, from the get-go of marriage.
I would even say, like, for us, again, I'm sure we're not reinventing the wheel when I say this, and that is, before we got married, Annie approached me and said, would you be open to going to marriage counseling? And I'm like, yes. Because, again, the foundation has to be laid out, and if you're already going into that marriage with issues and
Mhm.
baggage, and the way I always like to talk about my little red wagon where I have all my stuff. I really think that we've been a very successful couple, and yeah, we have our moments. I mean,
Mhm.
like any other couple. But I think the best thing was when Annie said, "Let's go to marriage counseling," and I'm like, "Yeah, let's get
Mhm.
things out in the open." And I would highly recommend that any. I mean, even if you're, first time getting married. Again, I think it really helped our marriage start off on a great foot.
Yeah.
Was going to the marriage counseling and just, what are you scared of? What are you scared of?
Right.
And let's just get it out there.
Yeah.
What I found out or learned through the Building Healthy Marriage program was that marriages are made or broken due to communication and conflict resolution. Those are the two main keys that will make or break a marriage. Well, when a marriage falls apart, there's no communication or conflict resolution. But in order to co-parent those children, you have to be able to communicate and resolve conflict. And that is what is missing in the divorce. When you go through divorce and you have kids, you have to go through the family counseling and all this other stuff. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot in how do you communicate and resolve conflict with the individual that you couldn't communicate and resolve conflict with to maintain a marriage.
Right.
And that's where you get those
Yes.
crazy, well, just treat it like a business,
Right.
or just be a grown-up
Forget it.
about it,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, those aren't real answers. And that's what we try and work towards, too, is figuring out how to do that.
And I guess, in the legal perspective of that kind of a divorce, then it can easily go to high conflict, because then we project so much anger outward, and our fears often come up in divorce too, with all the financial losses that many people are faced with,
Right.
or the shared parenting time. You don't have your child around you all day long. You have to let him go or her go for parts of your life.
And that's
So,
the one thing I cannot stress enough, is that you can't take your kids for granted.
Yeah.
And I personally, learned that the hard way. Because you think, you're going to be married to that person forever and ever, and next thing you know, you're not in the household anymore. You're living somewhere else, and you don't get to see your kids on that regular basis. So that was the hardest. That was the biggest wake up call. Was, oh my gosh, all those times where your kids say, "Hey, let's go out and throw the ball around," or let's go for a drive, or let's do this. I'm too busy. Next thing you know, you want those times back too,
Right.
and it's too late.
Yeah. One thing that I found in my work with families also is that it is when you're at that point of loss, sometimes I feel that the knowledge, that's the quality of time that you share rather than the quantity of time, can eventually help you through that moment where you just say, when we're together, it's just so close and so loving and so joyful together. So rich in the way we experience the relationship, that being more conscious again can make up for the other.
But I'll tell you,
Quantity.
from where I had, because I only have Connor every other weekend, and it's really hard for me to, especially when it's like, there are times where you just want to go, "Hey, you need to go, clean out my car because the car's a mess," versus, "Hey, Dad, I want to go play catch," and it's really hard for me at times. And again, luckily I've got a great partner, and it's those times where you say, "You know what, we can go play catch, we can go do this, but first we need to do this." The better thing is to teach the kids some type of discipline, to teach them life skills versus fun time.
Yes.
And I get caught in that a lot. And I think, especially, I don't want to speak for all dads, but coming from the dad point of view, yeah, you want to be that fun dad. You want to go out there and do all that good stuff and have fun. And then it's like, as they grow older in life, they didn't learn the life skills.
Right. What stands out in the way you approach your family is two things for me. you put your children first, and you work on the relationship. You really seem to be very conscious in the way you plan and handle your relationship. So those are two tools that we could, through this interview, share with our viewers. Have you found other tools? Let me just be curious. Things that you have found really merge you. Let's say maybe a shared hobby where you all come together, or moments and time where you just know every chick is under the wing, or traditions that you create. I don't know.
Right.
I'm a single.
I'm just laughing because camping. So all you viewers out there, for me, roughing it means the hotel doesn't have room service. Okay?
We like to camp.
Yeah.
Well,
All of
I
them
like
together.
Yeah, all of us together. It's a lot of fun. Even my oldest, who is 17, you know, try getting it.
Going on 35.
15, 16-year-old girl out camping who, you know, she'll kick and scream, go in there, love it the whole time, and then be asking, well, when are we going to go again? And, you know, unfortunately we're so busy we don't get to do it as often.
Yeah.
But the other thing we've gotten into doing is, and it's winter sports. It's not always all together, although the kids all like to downhill ski. Tommy doesn't like the cold at all, and I don't downhill, I cross-country ski.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when Connor has his hockey tournaments, we'll go up to the mountains for that weekend. The kids get to go skiing, I get to go do my cross-country skiing. We all go see the hockey games, and it's kind of a little mini vacation for the family.
And those are activities that go along with nature
Yeah.
and with family and nurture.
Yeah.
So you blend nature and nurture.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Trying to do as much outside stuff as possible, and
Yes.
stuff where they're too busy to actually have their phones out too much.
But the other thing too, and I think this is a great tip for blended families who are about to get married, is ask the kids for permission. And that's what I did.
Yes.
Betsy and I went to the local coffee shop. I brought the ring to show her, and I said, I want your permission too. She said, yeah. And actually,
Beautiful.
one of the biggest
Very
things, I mean, our whole wedding was dealing with family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of my best friends was my best man. One of my other best friends was our minister. Becca sang. Betsy was the maid of honor. You know, Connor was right there with us as well. The place where we got married, where they're talking about a sand ceremony, and the two of us looked like deer in headlights. Sand ceremony?
But it was actually a great ceremony for blending families. And basically what you do is each member of your family has a color sand. And that represents them as individuals. And then you pour it into a common container, and they kind of mix, but the colors stay, you know, pretty true, but then they kind of mix, and you layer them, and everybody's pouring in at the same time. And that represents everyone coming together as a family.
Beautiful.
And we still have it. It's on the mantle, and so yeah, it turned out really well. We had vows that were specific to that, and Tony, our minister, talked to the kids about how you're also in on this. It's not just your mom and dad. You're in on this. You have, you know, vowed to support your parents, and your parents vow to support you, and you know, this is our new family.
Beautiful.
So,
Very beautiful. To symbolize the mixing, the blending of different elements in the family.
But I think it goes back, Hannah, to when Annie and I first started dating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we laid down
Yes.
the foundation going, you know, first we had to understand where each other was coming from. And then the next phase was, all right, let's get the kids together.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next phase was, all right, if we're going to get married, let's do this. Let's go talk to, you know, a marriage counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think
Yes.
we had a process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our process will work really well for us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if we didn't focus on the kids, I really honestly don't think the three of us would be sitting here today.
Yeah. I think you developed and you see it still developing a very, very beautiful process from what I hear you say. And you are actually working towards putting this experience into a book that will be out for our viewers at some point about steps that you can take to blend a new family. There's so much divorce in our land. 50%, some say 50% of our marriages get divorced.
Right.
So these blending families will be the norm. It will be more and more of these families that will come about, and it is so important, like you said, not only to be happy yourself, but to blend your child or children in with the whole. I just also wanted to make everyone aware, Tommy has done a lot of work on divorce and how to help children through divorce. This is a coloring book for children which says 10 tips on how to survive your parents' divorce. And it really helps children process their feelings from their perspective, for how they might be feeling when their parents separate, and just to be heard and to have something where they can look at pictures, color them, and get a few tips and ideas of where they're coming in. I'll just show you one page on the inside.
And just to quickly, we didn't write this book. I mean,
Oh, you did not write that?
Oh no, the kids wrote that book.
Yeah.
The kids wrote the book.
Oh right.
Yes.
So Becca and Connor wrote that book, and the process there was they came to me and Ann and said, "Well, we want to write our own book," and we're like, "Fantastic! What do you want to write it on?"
Yes.
And they came up with the idea of they wanted to write from the kids' point of view, going through a divorce. And I was working
Love
with a marketing company at the time, and they said, "That's a great idea. Let's turn it into a coloring book."
Yes.
And so what Ann and I did was we put the funds together and went with the. I'm going to give a plug to my great friends at minibook.com. They helped put that book together, and it's just a phenomenal coloring book. I mean, written by kids for kids. I mean, you don't see that.
Right.
And here's another key that I pick up, and that's inspiring your children to be creative, to use their stress or their pain or whatever it is, not in a way of like what you said in the beginning, or be a grown-up about it, shut down, but to really to process this feeling into a creative outlet so we can help others. And I wanted to also make you aware of another book that I find contains so much more than you would imagine when you look at its size. It says 25 tips for divorced dads, and it contains just an incredible value of how dads in particular can make a relationship with their children functional, happy, creative, forward-moving, and just, what would you say, close in heart.
It was a cathartic book I wrote. It was all based on, actually, when I went through my divorce, I had to figure out how do I stay connected with Connor. The process for me was I just had a legal-sized notepad, and I would just write things down. The first thing I wrote down was send postcards. And at the time, I was traveling a lot between Colorado and New York. First thing I did when I got to LaGuardia Airport was I'd stop, get 5 postcards. I already would stop at the post office, get stamps, so I had stamps. Every day, fill out the postcard, go to the desk at the hotel, and mail out a postcard. I mean, something simple as that.
Yes.
One of the other simple tips that it was funny that somebody said, "Wow, that's brilliant," was just get a webcam. Especially for parents, divorced parents. You have one in one state, one in another state. You got to stay connected with the kids.
Right. So where can people get these books, Tommy? Where would we direct them to if somebody wanted to order a book?
The books are available on our website. Well, my website. We're working on a new website. So TommyMaloneyInternational.com. So that's Tommy, Maloney, International.com. And then shortly we're coming out with a new website where we're taking a lot of the information of the whole, we don't call bonus parenting. Quit saying step parents. Don't even know what that means. But we're creating a new website called blendingthefamily.com.
So presently, are you available for couples that would like to counsel and to get some insights and maybe work through naughty little problems or questions with their kids and with their exes?
Absolutely. We will walk that journey with you.
Yes.
And I think sometimes that's really just what I could have used more often than not, was somebody to walk with me and go, yeah, I know, I've been there.
Yeah, even if you're not here in Colorado, we can Skype with you or use Google Plus. But we're here. We want to serve that community that hasn't. It doesn't seem like it has been served the way it should be.
I agree. I do believe that therapy is needed in some instances, but what we all really need is a shift of awareness.
Yes.
It's a shift of a paradigm. It's a shift of how we do this thing.
Right.
Like Einstein said, if we keep doing the same things over and over, we get the same results over
Right.
and over. And so, it's just we need to shift our awareness.
Mhm.
And I believe that programs like the one you're creating and already having, and also the experience that you bring in as a couple, would be a tremendous help for many.
The one area that a lot of people don't think about, and I just happened to be here one day and I did a video blog of it on my YouTube channel, was blending the pets.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, if your child, for example, is afraid of dogs and you're going into a family that has dogs or are allergic to pets or something like that, those are little things that you really have to think about when you're blending a brand new family.
Right.
Yeah, it's very practical steps.
Mhm.
I believe that the love that we see portrayed in romantic movies, when it all ends with a marriage and everybody smiles and it seems like happy ever after. But the truth is that this type of love is beautiful and it's meant to be, but it is not enough for being successful. It is just a starting point, and if we don't add really very practical tools and steps to it, we see that beautiful love eventually dissipating or failing. And I think that is where we all need to wake up, myself included. None of us has that mastery. Our society does not give us that mastery in childhood. We don't learn it in school. We don't learn it even in university. You have a master's in psychology. I have a master's in psychology. We didn't learn that.
Right.
So
I went to the School of Hard Knocks. Don't forget that.
and that is, what it's all about, turning these hard knocks into mastery.
Right.
Well, and here's where I get really nervous, Hannah, is that second marriages have a higher divorce rate than first marriages. I think it's over 60 to 70%.
Right.
And I think this is where Annie and I really,
Yes.
we didn't want to go through another divorce. We wanted this to last forever and ever. And again, it was nothing that we saw written down. Maybe it was something from the heart, but we had to use logic all at the same time, going, all right, here's the situation. Let's define how to make this successful. And we just figured it out. We always didn't have the right answer, but we talk. And, I think the biggest thing that we focused on, again, bottom line, was the kids.
Yeah.
I always love Zig Ziglar's, when he talks about marriage. Marriage isn't 50-50, it's 100-100. And it drives me nuts when I hear the horror stories. And I know it's both moms and dads, male, female, but coming from the dad point of view, it just drives me insane when I hear the stories of dads leaving and not coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, these are your kids.
And I think you had talked about the shift in paradigm. What we need to get out of as a culture is the thought that, you have a relationship, you have a marriage, you have kids, dad can leave.
Yeah.
And that it's more okay for the dad to leave than the mom to leave, but it shouldn't be okay for anybody to leave.
That's correct.
And that both the mom and dad are so necessary for the health of that child, both emotionally and physically.
I agree.
you know, and we've just gotten into this idea that it's okay, moms can do it on their own. We can, but not nearly as good as if we had the dad involved.
Absolutely.
So
if there are viewers that would like to reconnect with their child, I would very much recommend that you get in touch with Tommy Maloney of TommyMaloneyInternational.com. And if you are a couple that seeks advice for making your blended family more successful, working through maybe details and glitches that you might experience in the process, I think Annie and Tommy would be a great couple to contact. They're in Greeley, Colorado. And I thank you for the interview. It's very lovely to speak with you.
Thanks for coming up here, Hannah.
Thank
and
you.
thank you so much.